You're live.
We are now live, and so if I may start by welcoming councillors and asking councillors for silence, please. And also welcoming members of the public, who I would appreciate if they were seated. And I think most of us here do know the health and safety message. If we have to exit, go out the door we came in or the one behind me, we wait outside near the playground and freeze to death until it's been given the all clear, and then we're allowed back in. So we will start with a karakia. Ngā mihi o te rā. Ki te whānau e hui hui nei. Ki tau te rangi mahi ai. Kia whakatakua tātou. Me nā mea. E whakapano ana tātou. Aumi ai hui ai. Thank you very much for joining me. Apologies. We have an apology for lateness from Councillor Plimmer. Are there any others? There are not. I move the apologies be approved. Anybody's? Yes, Councillor Elam seconds that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against, no. The second thing we come to is conflicts of interest. Do we have any conflicts of interest, councillors? Councillor Woodcock.
I saw a conflict of interest with the leasing of the rugby club grounds off the Trust Range Trust.
Thank you very much. Any others? Thank you. Excellent. Do we have any acknowledgements or tributes, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Ian Barton. I'd just like to acknowledge the passing earlier month of Lee Melnick. Martinborough was a long-standing businessman and contractor in Martinborough and South Wairarapa. I think in the past he's probably, or they have probably assisted in being subcontracted to Fulton Hogan for some of the roading work around the district. And earlier this year, I had a conversation with him about a lead up to our annual plan, and he had ideas and thoughts on their annual plan and our roading infrastructure and submitted submissions. So acknowledge his passing.
Right. Thank you very much. Any others, councillors? Okay, we shall move on. Now, just to signal that there will be a couple of variations to the agenda. The first one is about to happen now. We're going to go and discuss the minutes of the 2nd of August meeting. And then once that's out of the road, we will proceed to back to the order in the agenda, starting with public participation. But depending on what's happening at the time, we're expecting a visit from Sergeant Matthew Fitzgerald at about 11:45. So depending on what's happening at that time, we will vary the agenda so that he's not kept waiting and we can go efficiently to him. So if we could turn to page 13 in the minutes in the agenda, it's the minutes of the 2nd of August meeting. Do I have a mover to accept them, please? Yep. Councillor Olds moves. Is there a seconder? Thank you. All in favour of accepting the minutes, please say aye. 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 Is there any matters arising from the minutes, please? There being none, we will move to public participation. And the first person is Warren Woodger. So please come forward, Warren. And Mike Gray, please join him. And well, you have 5 minutes starting from now.
Good morning. In New Zealand, local authorities have the right to put liens on property for profits or rate payment consistent legal provisions outlined in the Local Government Rating Act 2002. The reality is that South Wairarapa District Council, SWDC, has a proxy mortgage on your home, your farm, and your commercial property. Their ability to borrow is based on your property, not assets owned by South Wairarapa District Council, which in fact the majority of liabilities. As an example, if a local authority can borrow money from the local government finance agency, the LGFA, to make sure it can pay back the LGFA, meet other financial commitments, they need to offer a guarantee. This guarantee involves using the money that it collects from rates as collateral. The system should aim to strike a balance between the SWDC need for revenue to provide essential services and the property owner's rights. Stewardship by councillors play a critical role in managing the balance between property owners' rights and the revenue needs of local authorities. One of their responsibilities include transparency and decision making. Property owners have a right to know how their rates are being used and how decisions affect their property rights. Local authorities in New Zealand are legally required to manage their finances responsibly. This includes borrowing within reasonable limits and ensuring that the debt is serviceable and can be repaid over time. The borrowing process is governed by the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Rating Act 2002, among other relevant legislation. The borrowing process is governed by the Local Government Act 2002. SWDC has a limit imposed by central government regulations. This limit is designed to prevent excessive borrowing and ensure that the council do not take on unsustainable levels of debt. SWDC is generally expected to repay both principal and interest on borrowed funds. Paying only interest without reducing the principal would not be in line with responsible financial management principles. It could lead to a situation where debt remains indefinitely, potentially burdening future generations of ratepayers. As a compulsory of this, I assume that SWDC follows responsible financial management practice, including borrowing within legal limits for paying both principal and interest and being transparent and accountable to ratepayers. In my opinion, the chair of the Finance Committee should be a qualified accountant. As there is no councillor with these qualifications, a suitably qualified person should be co-opted to fill this role. I acknowledge that South Wairarapa District Council has appointed Bruce Robertson to chair the Assurance and Finance Committee. This raises concerns for me on several fronts. Bruce is regarded as one of the top local government consultants stroke contractors, chosen to manage significant assignments for large councils such as Auckland. My concerns revolve around the cost of employing Bruce and the question of whether there are substantial risks associated with SWDC that require appointing someone of Bruce's calibre to chair this committee. In trying to determine the gap between South Wairarapa District Council borrowings and central government debt ceiling, I've derived a closely estimated prediction of total borrowings and also interest paid on these borrowings, using figures obtained from SWDC under the Local Government Official Information Act 1987, which includes information on rating units as well as data provided by the New Zealand Taxpayers Union detailing debt per rating unit and interest per rating unit. It's worth noting that my prediction may be slightly conservative as I did not have access to rating units for the commercial sector. In my example, I estimated the sector to be 1,000 units. So the total rating units times the debt comes out around about $29 million borrowed by council. The total rating units, when we apply the $99 per interest per rating unit, comes at a little over $776,000 in interest. The South Wairarapa District's purchase of the Lake Ferry campground reflects a consistent trend of borrowing, with a commitment of $500,000 plus ongoing interest. Upcoming expenditures include $2 million allocated for the wheel park and football club rooms, while the $1 million provided to Kirinoo College for their hall has already been paid. However, ratepayers will be responsible for covering the principal and interest repayments over the next 10 years. Finally, I'd like to know the debt limit imposed on South Wairarapa District Council by central government. I'm interested also in the annual payments made by SWDC, including both principal and interest, and I'm also looking for information associated with commercial units in the South Wairarapa District Council. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is exactly 5 minutes. So that brings that to an end. I apologise for that, people. There we go. Thank you. I just will pick up a couple of what I regarded for an anomaly in your presentation, which was that you appeared to think our finance committee chair was underqualified, and you appeared to think our risk and assurance chair was overqualified. So I'm not quite sure what it is that will create the happy mean for you, but I do wish to say on the public record that I have complete faith in both of them. So thank you for your presentation, and we now move to Mr. Jim Headley. Jim, if you could come and take a seat. You. And your 5 minutes will start in a second, but before it does, I just wish to remind you that the 5 minutes is an absolute limit. On the last time you were here, you defied the chair's instructions and kept talking after you'd been told to stop. It must not happen again. 5 minutes starts now.
Well, it's not dictatorship. Council put the annual plan out for consultation. That meant the whole annual plan, not just that part the council asked questions about. Council totally ignored the parts I brought up. One, the dog pound funded by animal control, paid 100% by rural, when most of the benefit is to urban. Two, footpaths saying they are funded by urban out of their 30% of land transport budget, when the evidence, that's the 21-31 long-term plan, and the current rating model show this not to be truthful. And based on what I see as a lie, council took 205,000 off urban's rates. Three, then there's the rural paying 75% of the 48% of governance paid by the general rate instead of 70%. The first reason, that's how the rating model is set. Then the model is set by historical decisions. Then, from Paul Gardner, the truth. Current rating model for governance was not updated to reflect the 2020 agreed revaluation. Why not just admit they got it wrong and fix the mistake? The minutes of the 28th of 6th, 2023 in the action from public participation, members note that Mr. Headley's comments will be captured for the rating review. This just shows the arrogance of councillors that voted to approve the annual plan. And an analogy is a person up on murder charge. This council would find them guilty, carry out the death sentence, knowing they were innocent, saying they will be pardoned, will pardon them later. As council refused to admit and correct their mistake, it is no wonder it's recorded in the minutes of the meeting of the 9th of June, that level of trust and confidence in council to carry out its work, social license, remains very low. As one person said to me, council is a poorly run business that rips off its customers. Comments on the Times Age article 11th of August. I don't believe that any of what I've said is misinformation. It's the council that has given misinformation, and it is the council that has abused their powers by not fixing their mistakes. And how can ratepayers meet with councillors if some of the councillors do not want to meet? Thank you.
Right. So we have some time left if there are any questions. Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Jim. Jim, thanks for coming along and speaking again. Just a couple of, certainly one point that I'd like to make is some of that information that you did talk about in the annual plan consultation about rates, that has followed through into the discussions that we're having now with the rating review. And some of those points that you have raised are available and in the consultation document, giving the whole district the opportunity to comment on. So certainly, council are listening and taking on board some of that information
As in-
discussed yes in the past.
My point is, the money has been taken off people that should never have been taken off. And money has not been collected from some of them that should have been collected. That's the damage is done, right? I understand what you're saying,
Thanks, Jim.
as long as you understand what I'm saying.
Any further questions? Okay, there don't appear to be. I will just comment that I thought it was an exercise in hyperbole, Jim, and
What's hyperbole mean? Don't use bloody words I don't understand.
well, there's a little task for you. And I would also say that most councillors in this council are more than willing to meet. Oh, God. My apologies. But most people in this council are more than willing to meet constituents and do so very, very regularly. And I believe that is one of the reasons why the latest public perception poll, in fact, shows a significant improvement in that area over previous years. Thank you. Now, the next person is
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Pauline Headley. Is she here?
Yes, she's here. Yes, definitely.
Where is she?
I am here.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
You are not Pauline Headley.
I am Pauline Headley.
You are not.
Yeah. Well, you try and tell me that I'm not a woman.
Okay.
In today's society, I can be a woman.
Well, if you can be, then you've just wasted 5 minutes of our time pretending to be Jim Headley. So can you
We
from the table?
I can change sexes.
Yeah. So we now move to B1, which is recommendations from the hearing committee. No, we're not going to go there yet. We're going to go to community board matters.
Sorry, there was no extra.
No. So we're going to go to the Featherston Community Board item, which is very, very close. In fact, it's page 1. We have a report there, and can I invite the Deputy Mayor to move that the report be received? Thank you, and I will second that. Councillor.
Thank you. I'll take the paper as read and just point out that I am presenting or speaking to this report on behalf of the Featherston Community Board today. I certainly hope that the paper speaks for itself. This is very much a community born, led and driven project. A lot of background work has gone into this, as you'll see from the paper. Lots of conversation with community groups, survey of our Featherston community, which has brought clear support for the naming of the park. Would also point out that currently the Featherston Playground doesn't seem to have a formal name. When you look it up on Google, it's called the Featherston Playground. When you look at it on our own website, it's just referred to as being a playground adjacent to other things. It doesn't currently have any signage on it. And most importantly, Joy is a firm part of our community. She is very much in favour of her name being used for this purpose. And I just really hope that this is a very, very easy yes for us as a council, given how much work's gone in the background, and hope to see that, you know, lots of projects of this nature coming from the community to this table. And so.
Thank you. And I might just use 30 seconds to say that obviously if we rename a public park, we have a little bit of signage to pay for, but actually again, the community have taken that in hand and they are prepared any day now to fund whatever signage changes are needed in accordance with council policies, of course. Now, is there any other discussion? There's not. Okay. Yes, thank you.
I'd just like to acknowledge the fact that this has come on, that the community of Featherston is recognising is recognising someone of Joy's calibre and her love for children as well. That comes through in all of her written word. And it makes me think of the fact that, you know, the Margaret Mayhew
Yes,
um,
Christchurch.
park down there and how much just by putting that little another amazing name on that playground, you know, people were actually got more involved if they'd read a book and so it's a win-win in a way.
Thank
You
you.
know,
Yeah.
so I love this idea.
That's brilliant. So just for the absolute clarity here, I wish us to have a motion which says that the council approves the renaming of the Featherstone Playground as the Joy Cowley Children's Playground. Will you move that? I will second that. Any discussion? There being none, all in favour, please say aye. Aye. I believe that is unanimous. Well done, councillors.
So,
So thank you. Do you have all that? Right, thank you very much.
Can I just make an observation?
No, you may not.
In the minutes.
No,
it
you
says
may not.
actions From.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Twice you have missed the actions from community participation.
Excuse me.
But what we're not seeing.
Would you please
Express-
either sit down or leave the room, Claire?
I'd just like to.
Would
put
you
that-
either sit down or leave the room? Thanks. Right. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda refers to the Maori Standing Committee, but is there actually anything here from them?
No, that's just a point. If
Just a-
people want to do anything.
Okay, right. So in that case, what we will now do is to go to item B1.
Excuse me, Your Worship, we have actually missed A6 in the.
Oh, what was that, councillor?
The public actions.
Actions
Oh,
for public
okay, yeah.
participation,
Are there-
that was what.
Oh,
we
are
were
there any
referring to.
actions from public participation that councillors wish to pick up? Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'd just like, from Warren Woodger's presentation, he had 3 questions at the bottom of his presentation. I would like those, the answers to those questions to be made publicly available at the next either council meeting or probably ICS meeting, if we can, or finance meeting. If they were finance questions, probably. Yes, a finance meeting or the next council meeting, if we could have the answers to those
There's
questions.
no problem, and there is no secret.
Thank you.
I mean, it can, if we approve a resolution later in the day related to another matter, we can put it up on the website quite quickly. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any others?
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
do we actually have the questions? Could I ask
Mhm.
Mr. Woodger to actually show? Oh,
They sent out.
right.
They only came to council.
They only came to councillors.
Yeah.
I'll forward to you now, Paul.
Yep, all right, thank you.
It's nothing particularly. So anyway, page 24, please, agenda item B1. So there have been there have been 3 matters brought before the hearing committee lately. One is the Easter Sunday shop trading policy. The next is the speed zone issue, and then there's the control of dog policy. And I will move that we receive the recommendations from the hearings committee. Do I have a seconder, please? I do. Thanks, councillor Gray. So I don't know that there's a lot more to say rather than to get into the nitty gritty of what are we going to do with the recommendations. Just to go through them in turn, the first one was the Easter Sunday shop trading policy, not greatly different to what we currently have, for example, and therefore no particular change. When it comes to the issue of the speed on our roads, the the recommendations are reasonably clear. One is that we would agree to a variable speed zone of 30k during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup outside all schools in the district. We would consult on a Martinborough speed zone set at 40k. We would keep the speed of Featherston on what's called Western Lake Road at 60k until after it passes a railway line. We would reduce speed on all gravel roads to 70, and we would ask council officers to get more consultation on what are called high priority roads. And then the issue of the dog control policy. Again, there wasn't a great deal of debate on this or discussion, but one thing that did come up, which is quite interesting, is that the last time the dog control policy was discussed, the Ngāwee residents were firmly opposed to having dogs out there. This time they are firmly in favour of it. So we had a submission from the Cape Palliser Residents Association expressing strong favour to have that changed. We also wish to have a couple of little modifications. One is that our current rules forbid dogs in the council's premises, such as swimming pools, but actually there's a popular event every year called Dogs and Togs, and it happens at Featherston, and obviously at the moment it happens in breach of our bylaw, so we wish to legitimise dogs and togs. And the other was an issue that was brought up for Martinborough, which is when you have certain events, say like fairs, large events in the square, at the moment it's perfectly legitimate to take your dogs through there, but actually when it's highly congested, it's highly unwise to take your little sort of furry friend in there. And so what we're going to suggest is that that there'd be a provision to actually have temporary, obviously, dog exclusion zones for those sorts of somewhat rare events, I think. So we'll open up for discussion. Thank you.
With regards to the Ngāwee campgrounds, I think it is something I'm sure everyone has read the papers and saw that. I understand that there are the ratepayers who are there that are looking at this, but I'm also aware of the constraints that we have as a council with regards to being able to actually manage this, because it's a large area. We don't have a lot of staffing, and to be able to actually cover this. And there are some things there, some pros and some cons, and I just really want to make sure that people around the table are aware of that weren't in the hearing, to hear some of the concerns that were put forward by our dog controllers, or controller. So I just believe that really does need to be taken into consideration as well. I don't believe that we have. Is there a way that it can be put in as a trial, or is that not possible with regards to this bylaw, to do a trial over the coming summer and then look at and then depending on what the call outs and things look like, we can revisit it? Is that a possibility?
Sure, that's easily doable.
I would have to seek there's one component which I just want to see clarity on before I answer. So Katie, who is on the policy, is online. Do you mind if I defer to her?
Certainly, go for it.
Morena, good morning, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, just with regards to the dog policy and bylaw, the schedules are able to be changed with resolution. So there would be an option to put in that dogs would be allowed in the Naui campgrounds. And then should that not work out, council would be able to publicly notify a resolution to amend the schedule to make that a dog-free zone. So yes, Councillor Maynard, with regards to your question, that is a possibility.
I guess my only concern is the fact that that the Naui Rape House had approached asking us to remove dogs from there and now requesting for it to be opened up again. You know that I think that we really need to monitor what happens in that space to ensure that we're doing the right thing. Yes.
Councillor.
Yes, I completely agree with you, Councillor Maynard. I just have a little concern too in terms of the farms around that area too. I just not quite sure that there's been quite enough representation from farmers in terms of how they feel about this. And also I think the trial would be quite good to be without too much damage to see if there is any risk in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Old.
Yeah, no, is an interesting area because when we did have a camping coastal bylaw in place and dogs were prohibited from that area, we found that the locals and the visitors to the area, for instance, who weren't necessarily stopping on a coastal reserve campsite, had dogs in the area and regularly walked across our camping reserve and their dogs played within our reserve as well. So how do you distinguish between a visitor, for instance, who's actually camping in the reserve as against a resident of rate and possibly a ratepayer in Naui, for instance, who has the right to have a dog and walk the streets and walk across our reserve as well? So it's a very difficult one, I can assure you.
Well, I just mentioned that if we have prohibited dogs in a particular spot, a local resident doesn't have the right to walk their dog through it. It applies to everybody equally, doesn't it?
It should do.
So I'm sensing that what we will do when we come to the dog bylaw is we will add another recommendation and we do seek a report from you. I suspect at the end of the summer, thereabouts, is that the...
It may be as well that perhaps because of the we're asking us to look at the Naui campground plus the surf breaks, which are on either side, which actually then really broadens the actual area that's needing to be monitored. And so there is the option as well, is that perhaps we just look at the Naui campground, and then that way it's a place that we can have just one area rather than multiple.
In response to your comment, Councillor Maynard, about resourcing, it is going to be a little bit of an issue for us because obviously we can't permanently locate somebody out there to have oversight for a long period of time. But I should imagine any kind of trial would be on the basis of how many calls are received and you know, as frequent as possible trips up to the area to seek compliance. But I think at the end of the summer, beginning of autumn might be a good period in time in which we can report back to council.
I think it would be great.
And I recall in the submission from the Cape Palaces Residents Association that a spokesperson said that the residents were willing to do their bit
But they don't have any authority.
They don't have
you know, and I'd hate for someone to step outside of their boundaries and end up in a precarious situation.
Well, as I'm reminded, that can happen anywhere. So a person recently walking up Jellicoe Street outside the supermarket who got bitten by a dog that poked its head out the window. So we have to be slightly realistic, I think. Any other comments about the whole paper? Any thoughts on shop trading hours, for example?
Can I just make a suggestion, Your Worship, that these obviously have been digested by the hearings committee and really we just obviously on the guidance of the hearings committee need to ratify the shop trading hours, I think in particular. That's one that.
Oh, yeah, well, we'll come to each of the items in a minute. At the moment, we're discussing the report and councillor Elams.
Thanks, Mayor Martin. I was just going to go back to the dog control bylaw. I noticed that under the submissions, not only had the Cape Palliser Ratepayer Association submitted, but there was submissions from other residents out in the Cape Palliser and the Ngawi area. So I'm sure whatever occurs and is proposed from this table, there will be other residents who will have their eye on the ball out there, and I'm sure that the council know how the thing is playing out.
Councillor Bosley.
No,
Oh, sorry. Okay, right. So just to make sure that, yes, thank you.
Just the Martinborough speed zone set at 40k. Is that the whole town, I'm thinking, or is this just the?
Yes, that's the whole town. And the consideration that was behind that was that people want slower speeds around the square in particular. And the question is, what happens in a place like Martinborough if you have several speed limits operating right throughout the town? Is that useful or not? And the consensus, I think, at the end was actually it would be much better to have a single speed limit for the whole town so that you see 40 Ks once, twice, and now you can be absolutely. And we weren't brave enough to actually recommend it. We want to find out what the locals think.
The reason I asked, I just happened to drive around the square the other day and I was actually thinking to myself, why is this 50k around the square? So I was just thinking, like, idea from the central part.
Any other thoughts on, well, let's just stick with the speed zones for a moment. Any other thoughts there? Okay, none. Any other thoughts on Easter trading? None. Okay, so what we'll now do is we'll move to the individual bits. And the first bit is the Easter trading shop trading. And if I was to propose a resolution that says we adopt the Easter Sunday shop trading policy, do I have a second? I do. Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, there being none, then I put it to the vote. All in favour of adopting the Easter Sunday shop trading policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Against? Aye. Sorry, was that an aye or a nay? Against. Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll move to the speed zone issues. And what I suggest we do is we take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in order. I don't think it's quite appropriate to take them as a package deal. And the first one is agree to a variable speed zone of 30k during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup outside all schools in the district. Do I have someone who would move that? I do. Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Old seconds it. Councillor Macaulay.
Oh, I think just makes totally good sense for safety issues.
Right. Councillor Old.
Oh, no, I just support what Councillor Macaulay says. Absolutely sense.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Elams.
I'd just like to confirm that this 30k speed limit is also going to include our rural schools like Whenua, Kahutara, and also South Featherston School.
That's what the motion says at the moment. Yes. Yes. Yep. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I have a comment. One of the things that worried me personally was that there has not been a great number of submissions from schools. And I believe that the reason for that was that we asked for submissions during a time when schools were under some pressure, and they didn't see it as possibly the sort of thing they could prioritise, but they were all aware of it. And so I actually visited a number of the schools that hadn't responded, just to find out why they hadn't responded, and did it mean that they didn't care or anything like that. And one of them was Piranoa School, and another indeed was South Featherston, by the way. Now, Piranoa School is quite interesting in a way. This is a matter that does concern them, because their school doesn't have a lot of off-site parking in the school itself. So people, in fact, do tend to park outside the school, which is adjacent to the road. And they do believe that the road at the moment is hazardous. And it's exacerbated by the fact that opposite the school is a hall. And that there are many, many occasions when the school uses that hall for the sort of things you use a hall for. And so children are indeed crossing them time to time. I don't believe there's a pedestrian crossing there. And so they indeed were concerned about this, and would be grateful for some traffic calming that happens at that site. The issues that came up from Featherston, South Featherston, were slightly different, and their issue is, well, what do we actually mean by morning drop-off and afternoon pickup? These are not particularly, I mean, we all know what they mean in relation to our own children, but what do they mean in terms of the broader policy settings? And particularly, what does it mean if, for example, you're having a lot of children who are about to go on a cross-country run or something, and there they are, they're lined up outside the gate, ready for that activity. Does it mean that cars can whiz by at 70k? And one of the suggestions that was put is that they would prefer to see, this is South Featherston, they would prefer to see the restrictions applying when children are present. So I put that on the table as well for your discussion. That's my comment. But
Just clarify, I actually thought that we had discussed this in the hearings committee as well, that we were looking at it being from 8 a.m. till 10, and then from 2 p.m. until 4 kind of thing on the
that's very true. We did.
yes, but the actual timeframes aren't on there at all.
In the end, that's not what we went with, but I do believe it has some legal advantages in that you have to think about what is it that creates the offence. And if you have 8 to 10, 2 to 4, it's very clear what the time is that you have to slow down. If you say during morning drop-off, what does that actually mean if you hit a child at 9:30, for example? So that's, I think, a very legitimate concern. Councillor Gray.
Did we discuss the possibility of installing electric speed signs that the schools themselves would be able to
turn on and off
to adjust the speed? I'm pretty sure Tim said it. I think he was going to go order them that afternoon, wasn't he? that was part of the current year's roading budget anyway, to have variable speed signs outside of schools that could be adjusted by the schools.
Turned on and off.
So there are two types of variable speed signs. There's the sort of thing that's outside Kahutara at the moment, which kind of urges us to slow to 40 at particular times. And then there's the sort of thing they've got outside Carterton School at the moment,
we talked about,
which is, but I don't know that we've had any costings on those, have they?
well, I'm pretty sure that Tim was confident about that.
Can I just ask Stefan to maybe comment? Are you aware of this, Stefan?
Yeah, thank you, through your chair. Just noting that Tim will be here for to discuss the paper in more detail, but the recommendation is that in urban areas that any development in front of the schools is permanent. speed restriction. So in urban areas, it's a constant restriction at 30 kilometres. In the rural schools, the proposal is that speeds outside the school and pick up a drop off time, it's 30 kilometres, and that's regulated by signs as appropriate. So that people are aware of it during the time designated.
And the school could do it, couldn't they? Like, Stefan, and the school could.
So if they were finishing early
I'm not
for the day.
sure,
Yeah.
and the installation of the signs is noted as subject to the budget, that's the policy, but the implementation of it is still contingent on budget.
So schools in town are
Down are permanent,
doing all 24 hours a day.
in the rural area.
That's not what it says here. It says agreed to a variable speed zone of 30
Is
Ks.
that what was recommended in the report?
Right.
Opposed to
Right.
Yeah,
a resolution?
I mean, councillors at the moment are looking at the hearing committee
Yep.
recommendations,
Yep.
and I'm referring to the to the
Original.
report that you'll be
report,
considering
yeah,
later,
yeah.
which adopts the interim.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, thanks, Stephen.
Sorry, can I just clarify that point in the difference between adopting these recommendations and the report? So item C1 and C.
Yes, I think this was an excellent point. So what you will notice here is that there are some recommendations here where the committee decided not to adopt the advice that we'd had from
So they would
officers.
become amendments of the.
And quite clearly, we can't have a cake and eat it. We either have to decide one way or the other, or potentially we have to defer it to another day and at the next meeting possibly. That's another option. And there are two issues, I'll just signal, where the committee, shall we say, went against advice. The first one is the variable speed limit, and the other is the 70 K on gravel roads, and I'll be having something to say about that too. Let's focus on what we want to do outside schools.
Well, I mean, so you don't believe that necessarily like putting what the hours with it, we kind of back the hearings committee, because now it just is variable, you know, or we drop off and up and then pick up, and we thought that it needed to be cemented a little bit more than that, because it's about raising the awareness. It doesn't matter if people, okay, well, you know, it needs to be, they need to slow down here at this time and at this time, so.
I think the other risk we potentially are running at this point is we're now sort of relitigating quite a lot of the decisions and recommendations that came from the hearings. So we need to be mindful of
Well,
that as well.
I was just querying why it didn't have the time frames that we discussed, like from 8 till 10 and from 2 till 4 outside the private schools. So that was what my question was, because now it just says morning drop off and afternoon pickup, which people could take as meaning 10 to 3.
Okay, the chair recognises the interim CEO.
Thank you. Just for a point of clarity, so the recommendations from the hearings is obviously what's come from the hearings committee itself. The item C4 is what the detail is that sits behind that, and that's the opportunity to explore all of the things that you're now talking about in much bigger detail when the experts are here to advise council.
So we could theoretically confirm what has been recommended here and then discuss the tweaking in C4.
Yes, council.
Okay, so I will recommend that we defer a decision on the variable speed limit until later at the meeting. Do I have a seconder for that? All in favour, please say aye. That's agreed. Let's come to consult on a Martinborough speed zone set at 40 Ks. I will move that we do that. Do I have a seconder, preferably from Martinborough? I do, thank you. Councillor Ealams, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next one, sorry.
I'm against. I was against it in the hearing. I'm still against it.
To keep the speed on the Western Lake Road at 60 km until it reaches the railway line. Councillor Olds moves that. Is there a second? Or there is. Councillor Gray. Councillor Old or Councillor Gray, would you just like to describe the layout for the benefit of people who are not?
So Moore Street becomes Western Lake Road as you further travel south. So Moore Street is in an urban area. It's restricted in terms of I think 50k area, and then it moves out over the bridge out past the cemetery, which is obviously quite a high traffic volume area. The road's quite narrow, and it makes common sense to reduce the speed accordingly. Beyond the railway line, it's fairly open road. It's fairly straight, and it does.
And the railway line itself, if I recall, has been a source of
developed over the years.
So it makes sense that keep it restricted to that. Any other discussion, please? Okay, all in favour that we keep the speed on Western Lake Road? Okay, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now we come to
Against again.
against. Yes, thank you. We come to the fourth recommendation here, which is to reduce the speed on all gravel roads to 70 km per hour. Do I have a mover for that? I don't have a mover for that, so we will pass on.
Yeah, no, I'll move.
All right.
I'll move that one.
Okay, councillor Plummer moves it. Is there a seconder? There's not a seconder, so we.
So can I just clarify again?
Yeah.
So in the recommendations here, it's 70, but in the recommendations from C4, it's to move to 80 in line with Carterton. So can I just clarify again, given that there's two recommendations and two separate papers, does one gazump the other, or do we re-discuss in a separate paper?
Well, I agree. Normally I would be somewhat perturbed that we haven't had a discussion about this, but since it will come up later on,
I'll recommend we defer it to them.
well, it's automatically deferred because we're not discussing it now. And then lastly, agree that council officers further consider consultation feedback, including the content of oral submissions on high priority roads, and report back to council with final advice. And again, that will also come up later on, I think. So I will move that one. Any seconders? Councillor Olds, all in favour?
So could I just, before we vote, I'd just like to ask a question about that. What does that actually mean? You know, we've had a hearings committee and we've heard all the submissions. We've made some recommendations. This thing here sort of says, the officers will now consider consultation feedback. Well, that's what the hearings committee was designed to do, was to hear the feedback and make recommendations. I'm pretty sure policy decisions are made by councillors, not by officers. Officers give advice. We've had the advice. We've had the hearings. At what stage are we going to go round and round and round in circles on this?
Well, this was the recommendation that came from the.
And you're aware I voted against it then, but I want the council to understand what they're saying here is saying that the hearings committee made some recommendations. Now councillors, officers who may not agree with those recommendations have had put this in and said, we'll go back and have a look at the feedback and then make some more recommendations. Well, what's the point in having a hearings committee if that's the way that's going to go?
Well, I think if the hearings committee doesn't feel it's had adequate advice, I think it's something like this is perfectly able to be done. Okay, all in favour that we agree that council officers further consider consultation, etc. Aye. Against? 2 against, 3 against. Okay, thank you. That is carried. Now we come.
Can we just against?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, let's do it again. All in favour, please show your hands.
Sorry, before we vote, just based on your comment, can we just clarify, did that recommendation come from the hearings committee?
This is the recommendation from the hearings committee.
Based on the hearings committee feeling it required further information.
That is correct.
High priority roads.
Yeah, okay. So all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favour. Against, please say no. 1, 2, 3, 4. But now we come to the control of dogs policy. And what I would suggest here is that we have recommendation we see in front of us, which is to amend the dog bylaw, including the following amendments. And there are 3 amendments there. One is that the chief executive may allow dogs and togs. The second one is that the chief executive may exclude dogs from events where it would be unwise to have them. And the third one is that the council lets us allow dogs in the Ngawi campground and the Ngawi surf breaks. And I would add a fourth, if you are with me, is that we have a report back on the third recommendation at sometime around autumn.
Can we amend it? Can we
Yes,
amend the
absolutely.
third one?
Yes.
Because it's to trial dogs with in the Ngawi campground for
To conduct a trial through to the
in the campground, and I think take away the Ngawi surf break, so that way it's a small area that to look at. It's the one spot where the presenter had mentioned about the fact they look directly over.
So what we will do is that we will start, I hope, by agreeing with the recommendations. And then I suggest you bring 2 amendments, one to exclude the Ngawi surf breaks, and the other to change it to a trial through to followed by a report back. Yes.
Sorry, I wasn't here at the start of the meeting, so I'd just like to say that I'm not going to vote on this as per my normal, but I would like to talk to number 3 before you all vote on it.
Okay, so that'll be fine.
But that's what we're doing now. So
Yeah, no, that's what we're about to do. Yeah, no, I understand what councillor.
Yeah, so I'm not going to vote.
Just saying.
no.
May not, but
Okay, so I move that we adopt the control of dogs policy, amending it as per 1, 2 and 3. Do I have a seconder? Yep, I do. Thank you. All in favour of
sorry, could I speak to number 3 before we vote?
yes, absolutely.
and I think
So-
I've got it amended.
What we'll start with the amendments, please. Councillor Maynard.
So for part 3, I just think there should be an amendment, so that's to have a trial for allowing dogs within the Ngawi campground.
Yeah.
For this season.
Yep.
With a report back to council at from the end of March, perhaps.
That's an appropriate council meeting in autumn.
Yes.
Is that?
Yes, at a meeting, to see what, to see if there is any further measures.
Well,
put in place.
let's just make sure we've got the wording
Yeah, no, I was
accurate.
out of my head, so.
Recorded. What have you got so far, please, Amy?
To trial allowing dogs in the campground until the end of the season and request a report back to council at the end of end of autumn 2024.
Okay. Are we clear what we mean by season? Are we clear what we mean by season?
Yeah, Martin, I'm just wondering whether we could have it perhaps after Easter 2024.
Yes, after Easter 2024.
24. Okay, thank you. Right.
So
So what we'll do is we'll make sure we've got the wording for the amendment correct. Then we'll see if there's a seconder, then we will debate and discuss it. Amy, please.
To trial the allowing dogs in the Ngawi campground until after Easter 2024. Is that what you wanted? And to request a report back to council at the end of autumn 2024.
Okay, thank you. Right. So, sorry,
do we need to clarify what that report is that they're reporting back on?
well, it'll be on the trial, won't it?
Well, yeah.
Does this include the surf breaks as well?
No, it's just do it in the order I said we'd do it in. So, councillor, is the wording
Yes.
Is the wording as you wanted it?
No, we've surf breaks, but no.
We've excluded surf breaks. Yep, thank you. Okay, do I have a seconder? I do, councillor Lee. Okay, now you may talk to your amendment.
I've actually, I'm going to hand it over to councillor Plummer. He wasn't here when we had the discussion before.
Thank you.
And he may bring up anything additional, and if not, then I can explain what we've already discussed.
Sorry, I apologise, Ben.
No, there's no need.
Look, as you all know that, should something go wrong here, this will end up in court. And I can tell you that it is a particularly horrid time when a dog bites a little kid. Campgrounds are where families go. And they have little kids, they have babies and things running around. And you heard, and I know that Rick will have said this, it is just a recipe for disaster. And whilst everybody loves their dogs, I've got 2 dogs, but in a campground where there are lots of people and lots of little kids, you are now saying, let's put dogs into that mix. And that is just madness. Sure as eggs, sooner or later, one of these little kids will get bitten. And it may well be by a chihuahua, and it doesn't matter how big the dog is. I can tell you, having been bitten by a small dog, it still hurts like hell. And if you're a baby with soft skin, it will rip them.
So guys, sorry, I'm just going to call this out right now. I'm trying to hear councillor Plummer, and there's way too much conversation going on. Sorry. Carry on.
I think you are just opening something up, and if you vote for this, are you going to be the person that's going to stand in front of the mother and says, oops, sorry? And I bet you we won't be. And Rick stood here and said, this is not something we should do. We have one dog control officer, I think, isn't it? Two. We can't even do it now. We've got dog control officers, or our enforcement officers only working from 9 to 5. So we don't have any after hours coverage on this at all. This is in an isolated community. It's just madness what you're proposing here. For what benefit? Because somebody wants to tie their dog up for a day? Well, how about you think about the people who are going there on holiday and don't actually have the choice not to be around a dog if you do this. And wait until one of these babies is bitten, and then look yourselves in the mirror and go, oh boy, we got that wrong. Well, it's too late then. It is really too late. And what is the benefit here? Who are you trying to appease?
Right. Now, councillor McCauley, you were the,
And I was putting you at Bex, who was,
well, you are the seconder, so you get that.
yeah, well, I must have, it was quite a good point. So, yeah, I didn't hear Rick with the original comments, so yeah, I was feel that we should be better.
Councillor Gray.
I take the point that you're making there, and my gut feeling is that we shouldn't be allowing dogs here anyway, but on top of that, I don't know whether or not having a trial written into a bylaw is an appropriate use of our bylaws. And I wonder, if you look at point 1, at the end of that, it says the chief executive may make an exception for special events. Can we have something like that in point 3, where we don't allow dogs in campgrounds unless the chief executive may make an exception, so that then we could have periods of time where, if we don't have as a council, so we've got enough dog control officers, we can have periods of time where we could open campgrounds, possibly in the off season, as determined by the chief executive and their assessment of our staffing levels at the time.
Councillor Olds.
Yeah, I'm just want some clarity around, I guess, the Ngawi one in particular, is that we refer to it as the Ngawi campground, but it's actually a reserve under the Reserves Act. It's not actually unless I've got my wires crossed, it's actually not designated as a camping ground. So we don't just have campers that arrive at Ngawi or Tora or Tawai. We have day visitors who often frequent those areas. We also, and I take on board what Alistair says, but do we run around wrapping people up in cotton wool or personal responsibility when it comes to dogs and welfare? Do we ban dogs from the entire district as a whole? Because that's what you're saying is effectively that we can't have dogs on a leash or under the control of people without the risk of children getting bitten. I mean, unfortunately, that's a fact of life, that these things do happen. And there are some pretty irresponsible dog owners out there. I have no doubt about that at all. But in my experience, the people that I run across in those areas or have run across over there are responsible dog owners. They are people, for instance, who care for their animals. They keep them on a leash. They keep them within sight of each other. So I don't know how far we go. But once again, I get back and I reiterate my point is that Ngawi is actually a little more than just a campground. Or it's not actually a campground. It's actually one of our reserves. So I want to make that point clear.
Thank you very much. Now, Paul, was there some further information?
Yeah, first of all, I apologise for speaking with Mav and masking out the other conversation. The point that I was making was that regardless of what decision you come to today, if you chose for a trial to occur, that would actually be through the schedule of that's attached to the policy. What's being asked of you today is to adopt the policy, and then the schedule allows you to do such a trial. And that's that. There's any future amendments to that trial means, any future amendments to that schedule means that you don't have to change the policy, if that makes sense to councillors.
Councillor
Thank you, Richard. So just to clarify something, within that amendment, does that make sure that everyone has to have their dog on a leash, or is that somewhere else in the policy that covers that, or do we have to state it in that amendment?
No, that's in our policy. That
won't be overridden.
Yeah, and signage. We covered signage in the hearing as well. Yeah.
Right. I think most people who wish to say something appear to have had the opportunity. Thank you, councillors. Now, just do a double check on my right.
So Amanda had a message from Katie before to say that if it could say to adopt instead of to amend the dog control of dogs 2013 bylaw subject to the following amendments.
Okay.
She thought that would be more.
Well, I will accept that. So we're at the moment, what we're discussing, in fact, is the particular amendment related to 3. And if you could just read that out again.
Trial allowing dogs in the Ngawi campground until after Easter 2024, and request a report back on the trial to council at the end of 2024.
Thank you. So at the moment, we're voting only on the amendment, which is
Ngawi campground to the Ngawi reserve.
Yeah. I think that it reflects a reserve, not a campground. It's not a right.
And
so obviously campground is the colloquial, familiar terms.
Yeah, and it does not include the surf breaks.
Thank you very much. So all in favour of
just the surf break one isn't mentioned in this.
No, because
taking it out.
Sorry.
Part of the amendment excluded.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendment, and the amendment has the effect of excluding the surf break.
Yep.
And the amendment has the effect of doing a trial through to the end of Easter, I think. Perfect. So all in favour of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against, no. Okay, that's and one abstention.
So there's three against.
Yeah. Well, I think there are 2 against and 1 abstention, I think. Yeah.
Great.
But not against abstain. Right, sorry.
Who was the other against? Sorry.
Down.
Okay.
Councillor Bosley, for great. Now,
I'm in the naughty corner.
Sorry. Now, before we come to discussing the full resolution, I have a letter first from Sir Kim Workman that I wish to table. And the reason which I sent out, I think, to all councillors last night, the reason I wish to table it is that I think we need to be very open and explicit about the fact that if people write to us after the hearings committee and after the submissions have been heard, that they must understand that that too forms part of the public record. And just in case anybody ever thought that sending a letter to us outside the, what would you say, the approved timeframe somehow got special advantages. We must make it clear that that's not the way it is. So I move that the letter from Sir Kim form part of the record of this discussion. Do I have a seconder, please? I do. Thank you, Councillor Maynard. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Right, so that's done. So now we'll come to the amended resolution, and I'll just discuss a slight tweak. So the main point here,
Voted to accept your amendment, and now we're actually going back to the resolutions.
the amended resolution. So the key element is that we are adopting the control of dogs policy. That's the key thing for today. And so can you just take me back to the wording, please? And so what I'm not quite sure if you don't mind. Can I go back to the resolution? Because the way I need to read it out. At the moment, we've got two resolutions staring at me on the computer. One is to adopt the control of dogs policy, and the second is to adopt the control of dogs 213 by law, subject to the following amendments. So as long as we're clear about that, and the amendments are 1, 2, and 3, with 3 as amended. So let's do those in turn. Do I have a mover to adopt the control of dogs policy, please? I do, Councillor Olds. Thank you. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Sadler-Footer. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. One against.
No, abstain.
Abstaining, right. Thank you. And now we come possibly to the more substantive issue, which is to adopt the control of dogs 213 bylaw. Surely it'll now be 223.
2000.
Sorry, that was
What
just
do you
I
think?
copied over.
I understand. Subject to the following amendments, and one is to do with the dogs and togs. The second is to do with special events where dogs may need to be excluded. And the third one is the matter we've just discussed, which is permitting the trial in the Ngawi Reserve, and that forms part of the schedule. So do I have a mover for that? I will move that. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder, Councillor Olds. I think we've had quite a lot of discussion, but if anybody else wishes to add anything. Councillor Olds?
No, I've got nothing.
Okay, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. Abstaining, one. Thank you. So I suggest we have an adjournment for 5 minutes.
Great idea.
And I do mean sort of 5 and We're moving, we're moving now to item C one, which is the audit engagement letter. And Paul, who do you wish to?
Invited Karen to speak alongside me, so I'll
That's all yours.
all yours.
Thank you. Morning, council. It's that time of year where we
Ready?
actually started the audit. So these letters are a formality, a compliance matter. So every year receive an audit engagement letter and receive a plan for the year. And every 3 years, Audit New Zealand renegotiate their fees for the next 3 years. So Audit New Zealand recently came out and met with us to go through the letters and explain their composition. And this is just really a formality where we agree to continue with the audit proposals and the audit plan for the next 3 years.
Okay, very much for that. So at this stage, I invite a resolution that we support. Councillor Plummer, Councillor Gray seconds. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And so now we'll come to the three recommendations. The first is that we receive the audit engagement letters contained in the report. And you're moving that we approve that? Thank you. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Elam. Any discussion? There being none, all in favour that we receive the audit engagement letters? Aye. Aye. Right. Now we come to item 2, which is we approve the audit engagement letter from 23 to 25 and the fee proposal from 23 to 25. I don't know what to say for that, but anyway, you are approving.
I have a question.
Yeah, okay, well, let's see if we want to even discuss it first. Do we have a mover for the resolution? We do, Councillor Gray. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Plummer. Councillor Gray, do you wish to comment? Councillor Plummer? No. Floor's yours, Councillor Maynard.
No, I'm just, are you able to point me just where their timeliness for the reports? Is there anything in here which advises them on when we can expect the information back in a timely fashion? With most contracts, there is normally something in there, and with the issues that we had previously, I'd like to know that our council has spoken to them about it, and that it is mentioned somewhere in here. Out of time.
Yes, so in the audit plan, and I think I'll just look for the page, it is specific that the audit commenced this week, it continues for 3 weeks, and that the adoption of the annual report is due by the 31st of October. So that is specified in one of the letters.
Thank you. Councillor Elam.
Is there any right of redress that council has, or a clause within these letters that if, as we experienced last year, the reporting was delayed significantly? Is there any clause clawback or non-payment or non-delivery, meeting the timelines?
Yeah. Okay.
So I recently attended a Office of the Auditor General meeting where all the chief executives from all the councils in the country were invited. And what we have experienced is not unique. And a lot of councils have expressed their dissatisfaction over last year and that their expectation on the current year. And so Audit New Zealand, or the Office of the Auditor General, have given an undertaking that they will complete them on time this year. There is a slight risk that may not occur due to the closeness of the audit to the adoption date. We have raised that with Audit New Zealand, that the final audit is due to finish on the 13th of October. So if there are significant changes to the financial results and the annual report, then that could delay that adoption due to audit not being complete.
For you, Mr. Chair, just one of those points I know that Karen's team has been experiencing is the Audit New Zealand's ability to onboard their new auditors in terms of their levels of capability and knowledge of the local government sector. So we are aware that there continue to be challenges, not just about having the headcount to do it, but the knowledge of the sector could be a potential problem.
And to your point about fees, we withheld the fees last year. So obviously we would pay, I think we pay in 4 installments. So last year we withheld the 4th installment and we would do the same again. Satisfied?
Thank you.
I was asking just similar sort of questions. Can we send a reply to their letter stating that seeing we were one of the last councils to get finished last year? Can they sort of give us confirmation that we will be one of the first to be finished this year?
We've had a meeting with them in person and we've expressed many times and directly to the Office of the Auditor General about what happened last year. And they have all given us an undertaking that they will do their best to complete all councils within the timeframe. There were, I think, 32 councils last year who were late and we were one of those 32. So that's about 40%. So whilst it seems that we were at the end, there were a lot of others as well.
The other little questions, not much we can do about it, but I see there are fees increased by 51,500. That equates to on their assumption that there's 78 hours of extra work, that it's $660 per hour. Well, I must be in the wrong business. That's all I can say.
Might all be in a council of the wrong business, that is. So or either that or we should be in the business of making orange cones. But I agree. I find those numbers quite eye-watering, really. If it's of any relief, which it won't be, Greater Wellington told me that their expected fee for the audit of their long-term plan consultation document was $500,000. I mean, we do have an alternative. We can go out to the open market and employ KPMG, but I don't believe that will reduce the cost. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, thank you.
We've had conversations with Bruce Robertson, our independent chair of risk insurance, and I'm aware Karen and I spoke yesterday about a discussion that the auditors have had with Bruce directly, and there has been a small decrease in the fee, but in the whole scheme of things, it isn't the type of amount that you would feel more comfortable with, I'm afraid, councillor. It's more of a nice to have. Yeah.
Right, so we will come to recommendation 2, which is A, that we approve the audit engagement letter and the fee proposed. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? And the third recommendation is just that we delegate the mayor to sign the attached letter. I will move that. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Plummer. Actually, normally I might not have, I would have just assumed this was a sort of a pro forma to it and get it out of the road. But I'm not prepared to just go off and agree a $80,000 increase in price without it being quite. And understanding that you have my back somewhat when I didn't sign it, which is okay. Any other comments, please? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you very much. And so now we come to the Community Wellbeing Fund, which is item C2. And I think it's on page 386. Which means we're probably starting to get near halfway through the agenda.
Get of the way, get of the way.
And it's not quite lunchtime.
Right, so the Community Welfare Fund is a a paper that notes that we have 1.38 million in the community wellbeing fund. It seeks approval to create a representative governance group. It proposes delegating that governance group to approve projects up to $50,000, and it proposes ring fencing funds to enable administration and operation of the fund. So do I have a mover to receive the report, please? I do. Councillor Elams. Do I have a seconder? Thank Councillor Macaulay. All in favour that we receive the report? Thank you. So what we will do is we will discuss the paper generally, try and judge the mood of the council, and then we will either adopt 1 to 4 as a job lot, or we'll go through them one time depending on what the sentiment of the meeting is. So who would like to take us off?
I'd like to invite Mr. Corbett to speak.
Thank you.
to the paper. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for your feedback informally on the paper. So I circulated this paper prior to tabling it in order to get your feedback on the approach and sort of test the comfort of councillors on the issues in the paper. So thank you for that, and I hope I've fairly reflected what I heard. The 1.38 million is now is available to us. There was some shifts from the original decisions that were taken by the previous council in August 22. Obviously, we no longer have the second tranche of funding, so we only have the 1.38. Unfortunately, we don't have the 5 odd million that was coming in the second tranche, and we have deducted, with your approval, 500,000 from the figure in tranche 1 to put towards our desludging efforts in our wastewater treatment plants. So we're dealing with a reduced figure, but it's still a very significant amount of money to put into the community, and it's a very positive a positive project before you today. I think it's probably better, given how busy you are, that we just open it up for discussion, and I'm here to help in any way I can.
Right, Councillor Elams and then Councillor Plummer.
Thanks, Mayor Martin. I'll just go back to my Stella. So I was just going through and seeing paragraph 6.2 resources. There's discussion there about management and administration of the fund and the reporting requirements. My rough maths, it's going to be 250,000 Ks. 250,000 K of that fund is going to be ring fenced for management and administration, because I'm just, is that correct, or am I wrong?
Councillor, that would be correct if we ran the full 3-year term. Yeah, and I mean, perhaps if I just quickly outline why we're asking for resource to administer outcomes in the 1.38 million. So the system that we're working with DIA demands that we make claims. We pay for the work, and then we make claims paid in arrears to DIA, and then they will we make a payment request, and we apply showing proof of progress, and then DIA pay us the money back.
So that 1.38 isn't a nice pot of money sitting in our bank account.
We don't receive it.
We apply as it's used.
That's correct. And there's a be fair to say there's a fairly rigorous reporting process and claims process that we have to engage with on using DIA templates and software. We still have to meet the proper financial administration rules and probity standards on the use of this money. So we'll need to be reporting that to governance, and we'll need to be reporting that to DIA. Central agencies, of course, take that very seriously, as we do. We will have to, if there are LTP projects that are put forward by council for this fund, those LTP projects obviously will have to be assigned to council and will be responsible for the management of them. They'll be subject to our procurement rules, etc. And of course, we still will have to engage with our community. We still will have to, the idea, as you will see from the previous decisions of council, the idea here is that we work with our community boards, work with mana whenua, work with our community groups in a really proactive way to originate projects out of the community. So it works in quite a different way to grants. All of that activity takes people and time, and that's what the resource that we're asking for will deliver. It'll ensure that the 1.38 million is used safely and it'll lower the risk attached to anything that we're spending in projects.
So 80K a year, which will be 240K. So that's essentially $250,000 and 105K to set up and close down the project. So these 450,000 out of the 1.3 gone just there in Australia.
But I think it's a bit lower than that, isn't it?
To set it up and included a media and communication plan, setting up governance, 15,000 to close it down, sorry, 25,000 to close it down at the end, which you have to report back to government at the end, and $75,000 a year for 3 years. That's the total. And there's an estimate.
But the 75 a year over 3 years is only should we wish to run the funding over 3 years, and there is the ability for this table to shorten that period of time.
Yes, you can.
And in which case you would save 75 or 150, depending on the timeline of the funding project.
That's correct.
So my maths is not as good as it once was, Paul, but I suspect the figure that was mentioned by Councillor Egan was very close to 3 times 70 plus the other figures. What have I got wrong? 3 times 70 is 210,000.
274.
Plus the extra 100.
Plus the extra. Yep. In fact, I think Councillor Elam's may have underestimated even. Okay, the floor recognises Councillor Plimmer, then we'll go to Councillor Holt.
Yeah.
I must excuse myself for a second. Please,
Stefan, thank you for this. Look, I don't agree with this paper, and I've spoken to a number of councillors, and views have been varied. But to me, I look at what the role of our community board is, and I'll just quote. To represent and act as an advocate in the interest of the community. So we have a wellbeing fund here, excuse me, which we wouldn't have had if it hadn't been for 3 years. So this is extra money that we never had. I know that there are things that our community boards want to achieve for their communities and bring them forward. So I know there's been a suggestion to the Greytown Community Board. I know there's suggestions to the Featherston Community Board. I don't know what's happening in the Martinborough Community Board, but I'm sure there's big projects. This side money was earmarked to basically transform our environment, our district, that money we wouldn't have had. Now, whether that means bringing forward LTB projects or otherwise, but to me, this is a great opportunity to say to our community boards, here's some money, go off and actually come up with your ideas for us. We don't need to create another governance group. We've got governance group. We've got 3 community boards out there that do this, and that is their job. And I would say we've got 1.4 million. Say to them, you've got a budget of which you can come up with an idea of $350,000 each. Come up with your transformational project. And at that stage, then comes back to council and we say yay or nay. But until they've done that work, we seem to be spending a lot of money on administration and setting up administration, which may not eventuate for at least a year. Because the ideas haven't been done, and our community boards have screamed to us for 4 years saying, let us advocate and do something. Well, here's an opportunity for them to do that. And if we don't do that, what's the point having them?
So just to let you know what is going to happen, the next person on my list is Councillor Olds, then Councillor Sadler-Footer, then Councillor Woodcock, but irrespective, at 2:45, I will be inviting Sophie Fitzgerald to join us, and we will suspend the discussion on this and come back to it. Councillor Olds.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for the paper. And I've been a little bit opposed to having a resource employed basically to help disperse funding. However, I think there's an opportunity here that we shouldn't shy away from. And for some time, I've certainly been in supporting of having a project manager internally appointed by this council to oversee projects and to ensure that we're getting value for money out of some of the stuff. And I think if we were going to create a position, for instance, for a facilitator to manage this fund over this period of time, that role could be extended to being a project manager. So not only would they be responsible for discussing this thing with community board and council as to certain projects, that person would also be responsible for overseeing some of the projects, and that could actually help us in the future basically make some significant savings in some of the project management stuff. So I see it having this being an opportunity to bring along somebody, for instance, with those skills, not only to facilitate but to project manage some of the funding requests that we may receive for some small stuff. So,
thank you, Councillor Olds. Councillor Sadler-Footer.
Thank you, Stefan, for the paper. Just in relation, I guess, to Councillor Plimmer's idea of using the community boards for generating ideas, I don't disagree with it. I think it is a possibility, but to my mind, where the ideas generate isn't actually what's costing us the administration money. So the generation of ideas and the governance of this fund is not what's causing us to have to spend or employ a person. The projects themselves, the application for the money, that's where the cost is. How we generate ideas, how we govern the use of the money is actually quite separate from the cost associated with looking after the administration of the fund. I think the other really important thing to bear in mind with this report and the governance and structure of the money is setting that governance up for success and having a very, very clear vision for what we want to achieve with the way we spend that money. At 1.38 million, on the one hand, is a lot of money. On the other hand, it's actually not very much, and it would be easy if we're splitting how we spend that money across perhaps 3 community boards to get quite an ad hoc spend of money. So I think we need to be mindful of the purpose and the vision and the use of that money so that we get value for money from the spend. And to my mind, whilst the community boards would be an excellent place to generate ideas, one body that's actually making the decision about how that money is spent, to my mind, would give a more cohesive spend for that money.
Okay, now, Councillor Woodcock, very quickly. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I, for one, am not a councillor that Alistair rang and talked to. But funny enough, his thoughts are exactly what was on my mind. The community boards are the voice for the towns. They probably should be involved in some way, if not a major way, in making decisions on this. I also see Colin's point, a very valid point, Colin, about a project manager somehow getting tied into this if we need some, extending it down the track, because we have all talked about it at times. But I, for one, am not a person who wants to spend exorbitant amounts of money on administration. We have enough ratepayers now screaming at us about how much money is spent in certain positions and whatnot. And I think we would cop it fair in the air if that was to happen.
Thank you very much. And what we're going to do is suspend the discussion on this for a quarter of an hour. I'm going to invite Senior Sergeant Gerald to join me at the top of the table. And I'll ask him to sit there.
Yeah, no problem.
So, Matthew, welcome, and thank you for agreeing to join us today. Shortly, we're coming to discuss speed management policy, et cetera, and obviously one of the, shall I say, the considerations we have is that on the one hand, we can, well, in fact, we can set speed limits for various parts of our district, and we've got a huge kilometerage of roads here. But obviously, we ourselves don't have the mechanisms for enforcing it. And so that's what people will want to ask about, I think. So I will start with a question, which is that when Wairakei slowed the speed in the north end of Featherston from 70 to 50, it actually appears, according to people who live along there, that it had the completely opposite effect, and particularly early in the morning with logging trucks, people rushing to get to work early. They seem, instead of slowing down, to speed up to make for the lost time they've lost on the 80K zones. So I've had many phone calls from angry people asking me what I'm meant to do about Waka Kotahi, and the answer is I don't have many powers. I suspect the deputy mayor who comes from Featherston's probably had similar phone calls, I believe. So what can be done about the problems of all those residents being woken up at 4:30 by?
Yeah, that's right. So there is a bit of a plan at the moment. So we're working with Waka Kotahi around better signage coming into the area. So at the moment, I think it's quite close where it says it's kind of going from 80 to 50. So therefore, you know, the time and space needed for people to slow down isn't really there. So there's that. Obviously, better enforcement. We're perhaps not as agile as we need to be in terms of being there at the right times at the moment. So we're not there at the 4:30 in the morning, and perhaps we need to be. But then I guess there's an element of perception that when you've got like a big logging truck driving past your house, whilst it's noisy and the house shakes, that may not necessarily always correlate with speed. So I guess we need to make sure that we've got the data there to show that actually that there is kind of speed there. But I guess we can be pretty confident that it probably is there. That there has been a little bit of slowing down in terms of that 80K in our area, but and plus truckies probably know that police aren't going to be there at that time, so therefore just chance there. So I guess it's that we need to work on our unpredictability a little bit more. So if we are there when they're not expecting us to be there, it's not long before the kind of message gets around to that wider group, and that kind of controls the behaviour.
So let's just take a question list. So we'll start with Councillor Elands. Who wants the second one? Okay, Councillor Elands.
Mayor Martin, thanks for coming along. Matt, my name's Aidan Ellams. I'm a councillor here. I was in the police for 17 years, so I'm certainly aware of road policing and targets and KPIs and that sort of thing. So I'm certainly keen to, and I've asked for you to come along, be invited along today, and I hope that some of the information that we have been looking at over the last few months has been shared. Our speed management plans. I've got some questions, and hopefully you might be able to perhaps provide us with some answers about road policing specifically in South Wairarapa. Off the top of your head, what are the KPIs, the targets for road policing within South Wairarapa district, i.e. how many hours of road policing are required to be delivered within our towns and our communities?
So we don't break it down specifically. We obviously get our targets from Waka Kotahi, and I guess that's spread amongst the district. A lot of, I guess we can say a lot of our targets, we need to probably be more in our metropolitan areas because actually we need to process large groups of people. But that doesn't stop us coming from areas because we understand that actually in places like, the Wairarapa, the road infrastructure is not where it needs to be. So therefore, actually, we need kind of greater presence to basically kind of stop those death and serious injury crashes, which predominantly happen in areas like the Wairarapa, where there's kind of 100 km/h roads and there's no barriers down the middle to separate. So it's I guess it's a bit of a juggling act sometimes that we're kind of held to account around the numbers that we need to achieve, and so therefore we kind of need to process lots of people through, and we are kind of a little bit hamstrung if we were to come to the Wairarapa all the time to do specifically those activities. So, but it's spread out evenly. That we have deployment plans, so we make sure that there's kind of presence in each area. So we've got like a impairment bus, which is that focusing on all those kind of alcohol stops. We've got our prevention teams, and so they're the ones that kind of go into those activities. So you might see them doing kind of speed operations, checking for seat belts, checking for mobile phones, and the like. And they're regularly in the Wairarapa, just as much as they are in places like Wellington and Porirua and in the Hutt Valley.
So back when I was working here in Martinborough, the road policing target that myself and my colleagues across the South Wairarapa, we had to deliver 250 hours of road policing every year, which was equated, and the measure that was judged against how many tickets you wrote out. So therefore, we were required each to write out 250 tickets, each constable within the South Wairarapa per year, which equated to therefore 250 hours of road policing delivery in the South Wairarapa district. Are you able to share with us, or you can't share with us?
So we don't collect that data. So basically, what our strategy is more kind of like winning their hearts and minds stuff of our staff. Actually, if we say doing 250 hours, actually they're going to stick to 250 hours. What we want there to be kind of no limits. So actually, they know like the places where they need to go. They know what they need to be targeting. That they've got supervisors that are running good, solid operations in terms of making sure that we're holding offenders to account. So therefore, we've got dedicated officers. So basically, their full time is road policing. So it's not necessarily limited by any time.
Right, Councillor Olds, I recognise you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, and thanks very much for coming along today and giving us a bit of a heads up. Because obviously we have to make some decisions around speed in our rural roads, not our state highways. That's governed by Waka Kotahi. And I'm just wondering if there's a percentage that where policing of rural roads, if there's a percentage of time between state highways being State Highway 2 and 53 here and our rural roads, whether or not there is some time that has to be allocated to our rural roads rather than the state highways.
Well, we've got an operation called Open Roads, and Open Road is classified by a road that's over 80 km an hour and doesn't have a separating barrier. So roads like, I guess you say Highway 2 doesn't actually matter because we've got like this, not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't meet the criteria because there's that separation there now. So we know that's actually the highest risk is actually away from the State Highway 2. So we say to our staff, you need to go places in these open roads. They're actually measured on that in terms of, I guess there's some sort of classification process. So when we get our information back from PNHQ, they'll say how much we're achieving in that area. And I think 90% of our open roads are in the Wairarapa as well. So so it's very much a target for us. So.
Yep, that's good. Just personally, I haven't seen a lot of evidence of police patrolling other than the local policing resource, not the road policing people patrolling much of our south coast roads, etc. And maybe that's just my observation.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit hard because you've just got so many roads.
Yeah, we have.
And they just
when I'm not sitting there with a camera saying there's a policeman coming.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So Councillor Sadler-Foot and then Councillor Maynard.
Good morning and thank you for joining us. Some of the decisions that we've been looking at over a period of time and will come to the table today are around our rural roads, but they are roads that potentially now will fall under your 80k and over cap. Would it be fair to say that the decisions we make around those roads when we're setting those quite low speeds are based, I guess, on the scientific and moral knowledge that that is a safe speed for that road, and that by putting up that new sign, we hope that the majority of people will adhere to that new speed, because it's unlikely that the driving force, excuse the pun, for change would be enforcement, because it's unlikely that there's going to be much of a police presence out on those sort of coastal or low use rural roads.
I mean, I guess we try to be as unpredictable as possible, but like there is a finite resource and so I guess we're out there, it might be like 2 cars and say like it's a massive area, so coming across them is quite rare. But I guess it's, for me, it's that, that survivability, it's the roading infrastructure that's just not forgiving, that potentially if you've got 2 heavy objects travelling together or travelling towards each other 100 k's an hour each, no separation, kind of no ability to almost kind of like pull off to the side if something happens. That it's kind of a recipe for disaster. And I've been to a few fatal crashes out here that it's just gnarly stuff.
So we need to make those decisions based on what we believe to be safest, not on what will be the most heavily enforced, because the safest is actually what wins here, rather.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Councillor Maynard.
My question is quite similar to what Councillor said before, because brought up, but because one of the things that we are looking at is gravel roads. And I guess I just want to kind of bring it down even a little bit more. The fact that not all of our roads are sealed here. And what you find.
Road, so therefore I can drive at any kind of speed. So that's not necessarily like always a, kind of like an accurate thing. I don't know, like I'm not too familiar with gravel roads. I found myself out a gravel road and the one I've probably taken a wrong way, but I mean, it's something I can talk to the team and get a sense them.
Yeah, so I just think sometimes like the difference between 70 and 80. Well, it's 80, so it's 100. When it's 70, it's closer to 50. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Woodcock, then Councillor Elam.
Oh, hi, Matt. I'm Woody, councillor for the district from Greyhound. Thanks for coming along. Just to do with sort of what Pip was asking. So the little issue I have is, like, say you have your 70 and 80 and hundreds or 70 or whatever. What's the how do you look at it with, like Pip said, if you've got someone regularly knows the roads, can drive the roads confidently, and then you've got people that can't. Is there any point the police are making about education, driving the conditions, rather than slowing the whole world down?
Yeah,
and making sure that the 100k is not a target. It's an opportunity, maybe.
I encountered something similar today. So coming over the Rimutaka Hill, there was somebody who was travelling to Featherston. Just obviously wasn't aware of the impact that they were having to the traffic behind them. So they were on a Toyota Corolla, brand new, but kind of slowing down for 15 k's every corner. So it was pretty insufferable. So they kind of pulled them over and had a discussion with them. But it's an education beforehand, isn't it?
Yeah.
And around their capability. But I guess so you've got somebody at one end who's doing like 50 k's an hour, and then you've got somebody who can confidently drive their hill at 80 and maybe faster, sort of thing. So I think there needs to be a middle ground, because you're going to have those people that, as you say, see that 100 as a target. Well, if it's 100 k's an hour, so therefore I can kind of travel safe. So it's
So, the next on the list.
Hold on, just sorry. So the other part of my question, Matt, is how do you gauge and maintain that your officers are actually doing things, so not wasting time as such, you know, they're making sure they're making the most of their day. For an example, the other night at the Kuranui College prom in Carterton, there was a procession of cars coming around the corner into, so everyone pulls up, you know, in their hot rods and their trucks and whatever they get put in. A couple of kids got dad to drop them off around the corner on their ride-on mowers. They drove around the corner, you're talking here to that corner over there. They were from here to the other side of the road away from jumping off them, and they had a police officer pull over, stop the whole procession, give them a good telling off and tell them to get off their mowers and go away. Now, I don't see that as well-used time.
Yeah.
I see that as pissing the public off and making the police look bad.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think I need to. Yeah, it's very much a community thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I just interrupt? Sorry, I'm really excited. Interesting as this is a council meeting about making decisions.
Yeah.
We have a,
It
let's just explain to councillors.
it was a majority decision of people to.
I know, but I just want to explain to councillors, we have a whole committee.
Taking up time and it's precious. So the next person on is Councillor Elams, then Councillor Oles, lastly Councillor Plummer, and
I've got nothing more to say. We've got a roading committee. That's the best place to do this.
Councillor Elams.
My final point, Matt, was just going to ask a question as to how will police be delivering road policing hours if our council around the table here is going to reduce speed limits within our district. Are we going to see more enforcement of our change of our lowered speed limits to ensure that our residents and our ratepayers within our district are going to be in a safer position? There's no point in reducing speed limits if there's no enforcement.
Yeah. So with anything like changes, so would I always forget what the E's are, but would like do that 4E approach at the start. So I guess it's on education and enforcement's two of them. I forget what the other two are. But like engineering. No, that was
enforcement and
possibly. So it would just be kind of if we're stopping people in that first, couple of weeks, we're having conversations with them. We're just like reminding them that actually the speed is kind of lowered. Would be going through social media. Would probably go through your local media as well, just to let them know that kind of police are going to be enforcing those areas. And then also one of our priorities is that 1 to 10 kilometre as well. So we would look to bring. Kind of target that to bring down that median speed around those areas. So it would be a little bit, not harsh, but we would say, well, actually, we need to be quite firm if we're going to see that culture change.
More policing of our road safety policing occurring within.
Yeah. So we've got dedicated road policing officers. We've also got the Wairarapa area. So we'd be working with them as well. To do that, and also we're increasing our number of road policing officers in the Wairarapa. So I think we've got 12 there at the moment, and it's increasing to 15. So just a few more deployable.
Councillor Oles, then Councillor Gray, then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Mine was just a general observation, and given that we've got engineering in motor vehicles nowadays, which is so safety conscious in terms of frontal impact, side intrusion, ABS, a whole 9 yards of vehicle safety, and we're having this discussion about reducing the speed limit, and yet vehicle manufacturers are expected to emphasise more on safety. And I'm just wondering if you have a view on the safety of a motor vehicle now down, the survivability is a lot greater than it was as a young fellow growing up and driving an old 105E Anglia and a Cortina, for instance. And I'm just wondering if you have a personal view on the safety of motor vehicles and what you've run across in your experience.
Yeah, I guess vehicles are safer, but there's still drivers behind them at the end of the day, isn't it? So we've got to rely on them making good decisions. Okay. So I guess you see part of your new State Highway 2 network with the road barrier, there's about 90 metres where somebody's kind of taken that out recently.
What already?
Yeah, a couple of days ago. So that's actually a head-on crash, whereas all the best safety equipment in the world, got cars going that. speed, you're not going to escape, from some sort of serious injury or death.
Okay.
Councillor Gray.
Thanks, David.
So hi, just a very quick question. One of the bits of feedback that we get from people is that if we drop the speed limits, there's going to be an increase in frustration from drivers leading to further accidents. In your experience, has that borne out in other areas in New Zealand where they've dropped speed limits?
Not that I'm aware of. I guess you're always going to have drivers that sometimes take more risk than they should. But then sometimes it's kind of that and having a good roading design. So if there are mistakes, then actually there's a bit of give for them to if something goes wrong.
So that's not a known phenomenon in terms of.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And can I say on behalf of everyone, thank you for sharing your time with us.
Yeah, much.
And it's been great. And look, good luck to all you do. Catch all of those speeders that are keeping the Centurions awake at night. Thank you very much. So we will return to the Community Wellbeing Fund. And I'm not sure if I have another speaker. I think we finished with Councillor Woodcock. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to it, please? Thank you, Councillor Gray.
One of the things I'd like to pick up on is it's been suggested that it gets funneled through the community board, which I personally think is a good idea, but I think it will do that with the Māori Standing Committee as well. Mana Whenua is getting a decent reply as well. And then also, even though I think that the amount that's been recommended to have this governance structure, it seems very high compared to the total amount of the fund now. I think it's worth not losing sight of the fact that if we do approve that, based on my very quick calculations, I think it was up to a limit of $50,000 per project. That would be 22 projects within our community that would be able to be funded within the next year or two. And I am concerned that if we drag our toes too much on it, we miss the opportunity and the communities miss the opportunity to access those funds. But that's
Sorry, may you speak? You want to speak before me or after me?
Quite happy to wait, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Right. So I think there is a consensus that the proposals we're looking at haven't taken enough cognizance of the fact that we have groups, boards already there. I think there's been a number of expressions of concern about the amount of money that's potentially ending up in admin as a percentage of the overall total. I also think there's a lack of clarity around what is the governance group actually going to do. And the closest we get is that it can approve projects above to 50K. And I think I would like to reflect on that because clearly one of the alternative proposals would be that the community boards would have some discretion on spending up to a certain amount. But on the other hand, I do think there is advantages in having an oversight group that makes sure that we don't have 4 different funding groups and somehow duplicating, replicating, and not getting the sorts of advantages that they might have taken by. I also think that we have to be careful that we don't cut ourselves off from the possibility of having something that works, in fact, right across the district rather than potentially repeating the let's turn it into 3 little fiefdoms and what have you. So my view is that this needs quite a lot more work. In particular, one of the conditions and one of the minimum expectations for how we, in fact, undertake engagement with this money is that we have a focus on hapu, iwi, and post-settlement government entities. Now, we actually have a post-settlement entity in this part of the world now. I don't see them being met. And I also don't think the Māori Standing Committee is actually a substitution for iwi either. So I think we need to be very clear about what it is that we would want the Maori Standing Committee to do versus what is it that we're actually required to do, which strikes me as something that goes possibly to a level of engagement. In fact, it specifically says we want to see evidence of genuine engagement, which extends beyond standing committees. So we've been sent a serve already. My suggestion is that, in fact, we propose, now I hate to say what I'm about to say, but I do think that the best thing we could do here would be to direct the matter to a working group, which includes a wider than just councillors. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I do have that question because I just to understand, you've actually written in here in 8.1, there is reputational and relationship risk with our key partners of iwi hapu Māori if we do not activate the Community Wellbeing Fund. Can you explain that a little bit more? Just so I can understand exactly what engagement has happened with regards to that, where you feel that there's actually a really big risk here by not activating it.
Thank you, councillor, and through you, Chair. So just reminding councillors, because most of you weren't here, we're working off a mandate and decisions of council, and the recommendations from August 22. So we've got decisions from council that we are working to at the moment, and what we're trying to do is operationalise those decisions. Now, of course, those decisions can be unpicked and reversed and changed, and that's no problem. But the answer to the question is that when we were going through that process of setting up an appropriate governance structure and gaining support for the fund, we engaged with iwi and MSC, and because we had to, and the support that we got from them was terrific, really strong, and they wrote letters of support for us, and that allowed us to make a successful application to the DIA, which is another thing I would note. We've already applied to the central government to set up this fund, and we've outlined how it will operate, and that has been approved. So we've got a resolution of council, we've got a decision from central government on these things already, and what we've been hearing from iwi and from MSC is please honour that, that decision and operationalise it and get going and get this money into the community. So what we're trying to do here with you is find a way through that. Obviously, we're not doing a very good job of it thus far, but we're trying to find a way through it. And the governance is absolutely key. And that governance would have iwi, MSC, and community boards at the table, and they would be helping us make those decisions, and they would be people that were very important to us in terms of engagement and originating projects. So that's how we foresaw it operating.
So
I'm going to go next to Paul, Councillor Plummer, Councillor Sadler.
I just have a follow up on my original question.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. I do apologise. I know that there's a lot of people that are wanting to ask, but it just goes back to what you were saying, because one of the things that it says is that there would actually be very low administrative costs here, so it says here the governance group would look like councillors, ELT, mana whenua, and community representatives. That would make that up. But that hasn't happened yet. So that part, that working group hasn't happened yet. And it says that where is it? It said that there wouldn't actually be a high. The cost for administration would be low, would not be high. So
I'm not sure that is actually a question, but never mind. Paul,
I'm just wanting to know where it's at because.
Okay, yeah.
So with the best intentions in the world, we we want to make the most out of this limited pot of money, of course, and we want to maximise the impact for our community. The vehicle for doing this is through the oversight of the governance group, and clearly we need to get that going. I would emphasise and just re-stress that we're not seeking unreasonable. That word administration can be, be a bit of a monster, if it's because it masks a whole range of different things. We are wanting to maximise the opportunity to have the coordination over the activities to maximise the benefit for the community. That is simply what it is. And within our current resourcing constraints, we couldn't do this as well as that, right? So we have limitations. So we're not looking to do anything other than get better outcomes. And an example might be that the community halls might decide that they want to be revamped. Yeah? And so that'll be a great project. However, the negotiation component of that is going to be far bigger, far better, more effective if you do it as 3 rather than if you do it as 1, if that kind of makes sense. So it's the ability to be able to source materials, source services as a collective and look at the overall impact. I'd just like to make the point here that the resourcing of this is doing nothing other than getting the best out of the money available.
Councillor Plummer.
Yeah. We're not at the stage of resourcing anything yet. We haven't got the ideas. That's the point, Paul, I think, and Stefan. I think, no, I don't. As I said to you privately, I said I've never had any problem with having a project manager manage the project, but we're not at that stage yet, and we might not be at that stage for a year. And if I go back to the resolution that was made by the previous council, it says funding decisions and oversight of community project applications to the fund will be made via a governance group. Now, the governance group doesn't cost because it's us. So why do we need a project manager or someone to run this for a year when we haven't even got the applications from the community? And that was my point, say to our community boards, there is this money here, go forth and think of ideas. And when the ideas come, that is the stage in which we then start expending money on project management. Because otherwise we're doing it for no purpose and may well cost us, $180,000 a year, and the person sits there and does nothing.
Mr. Mayor, Amanda's got a point of clarification.
Yes, Amanda is not being recognised by the chair. Councillor Sadler.
So just to my earlier point, it's not to my understanding, it's not the governance group, whichever structure that takes, that this cost is associated with. It's the payment and the relationship with central government which is where the administration sits. Presumably, in some ways, Councillor Plummer is right. The governance structure could be set up well in advance of getting this administrator in place. Further to that, I would be incredibly disappointed to see this paper and a decision on it deferred any further. This original concept comes from August 2022 in various different forms. The Wellbeing Fund has come to this council a number of times. Once a decision is made on potentially option 1 and going ahead with the governance structure and moving forward to be actually in a position to receive ideas from our community, whether it's community groups or the community boards to the governance group, we are still a period of time before anything would happen. This group of council are almost a year into their triennium. We run a real risk if we defer this any further that, there may not be a project come to fruition before the end of our triennium. As Stefan said, the decision today is simply to operationalise and to put us in a position where we can actually start building a governance group that can start taking ideas, can start looking at funding. Please let's not defer that any further.
Correct. The chair now recognises Councillor Macaulay, and it will not recognise anybody else further on this debate who has already spoken. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you. I very much agree what Melissa said, and I think too that we should go ahead and get the governance board formed. I think we also need to galvanise the community boards, the Maori Standing Committee, to come forward with the work on the project submissions to put to the governance body. But yes, I agree with Melissa. I suspect most of the cost is associated with interacting with government. The applications for the money are horrendous. I've had involvement with some of these, and also the reporting, accountability type reporting back to government is actually horrendous. And I suspect that's probably what we need the professionals for and the money. But I would like it to be looked at again if that is how much money we need. It does seem a lot.
Right. Is there anybody who has not spoken who would wish to? And that is speaking to the report itself. Okay, all in favour that we received the Community Welfare Fund report, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now I think it's pretty clear that we don't have unanimity on the remaining 5 recommendations. So we will come one by one.
No, there's. Take them one at a time and we'll find out.
I'm going to take one at a time, exactly. So the first one is that we endorse the activation of a community fund with a total available pool of 1.38. Do I have a seconder? I move up, Councillor Plummer, Councillor Potter. Councillor Plummer, in your
nothing else.
You don't wish to speak, Councillor Potter. I'd like somebody to tell me then, what does activation mean?
Oh, that's to create accept the funds to us.
Yeah.
Basically saying we're accepting that money.
We've already accepted it.
Setting up of the governance board.
I could explain that. So this is the activity that we're talking about, which isn't currently resourced in the council. So we need to set up a comms plan so that we can advertise to the public exactly what the fund is and how to apply, application process.
No. We need to get the governance group set up first.
Yeah, setting up activate.
Before the.
Sorry, I was just answering the question.
Well, it was on point
activation.
2. Yeah, the point 2 was about activation, which is what the question was. And the governance one's further down. Sorry.
So have I got it wrong? I'm talking about what's required to activate the fund.
No, the question is, what does activate mean? We've already been allocated the money. It's good for us to go. What addition?
You might use the word operationalize instead, Chair. So it's just creating the rules and the systems and processes, letting the public know, and starting to get your governance group set up and working with your community on starting to originate projects. So it's just operationalising the fund.
So in actual fact, it's recommendation 3 that's actually doing something that will result in an outcome.
Yeah, maybe activation was an appropriate word.
No, so the way I would read that is that 2 and 3 are the same. We're establishing the governance group, and that group, in line with you, is going to set the rules around how it's going to operate.
Yeah.
Not going out to the public yet. We're not at that situation yet to go to the public, because as you've heard, there's differing views about how we're going to do that. But getting that governance group established with the rules around the fund, and I don't have a problem with rules around the fund at all, but actually how we then communicate that to the public, that's a decision for the governance group to make. Because the governance group might say, we want to split this 3 ways across the 3 communities. They might say that. That's what the governance group has the authority to do.
Okay, so we'll move to vote on the motion number 2, that we endorse the activation of a community wellbeing fund with a total pool of 1.38 million. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, that's carried. So we move to appoint a governance group and call for nominations for a youth leader to be appointed. Do I have a mover, please? I do, Councillor Maynard.
Can I just ask how are we going to go about this youth nomination?
Get your chance.
Well, that would be part of the terms of reference.
Right. Councillor Maynard, what would you like to?
I just think that we need to get the governance group set up first. It needs to have a terms of reference. When that terms of reference is in place, then we look at calls for a youth leader to be nominated onto there as part of that governance structure, but we don't even know what it looks like yet. So I think that the second part of this, number 3, is possibly going to be out for the horse. So
Okay, that we'll take that on.
absolutely, I don't want to tell your voice, but I'm just a bit confused.
Yes, no, I don't.
Okay, so can I ask the people who are moving and seconding it, what actually do you mean by a group? Do you mean a committee of this council?
It's outlined in the paper.
In the paper, it actually says about what the overarching governance group is to look like. So it has people, elected members.
I know, what is the legal form of it?
Okay, could I make a suggestion then? I suggest we have one councillor from each ward, one member from ELT, one member from the Maori Standing Committee. As the governance group.
And a youth representative.
No, not yet.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question.
Well, I'm trying to.
That's the composition of it.
But that's the point. Well, let's make the composition of it.
That's right.
Then say who's going to be on it.
Councils don't tend to have things.
They're going to be doing their thing.
They have things called committees.
Yeah.
And what I'm asking for is, what is the legal form that we are looking for here? And I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Gray.
Well, I don't think I've got council committees, because otherwise.
It's got to be something.
Well, otherwise,
The governance structure and delegation is really clear in there what, like, there's the membership of governance to be made up of chairs of community boards, councillor representatives, representative from the Māori Standing Committee, representative from ELT, Ho Māori, and a youth leader, potentially by working collaboratively with people who participated in the Rangatahi strategy, which was ratified by our council recently. Like, it's very clear what that governance group would be.
It's clear who would compose the governance group.
So are you looking for whether it would be a committee or a working group?
Well, what is it exactly?
Well, I think it needs to be a committee because they're asking to be able to approve projects.
I would agree.
Do that if it was a working group.
I would agree with that. But I'm not clear whether the person who prepared the report had thought about that. That's my question.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please.
okay, so it should be a subcommittee of council in my view, because it needs delegated financial authority and it needs to follow our internal policies for that reason. That would be my recommendation.
Right.
Correct.
So could I ask Councillor Maynard and or Councillor Macaulay to replace the word group with subcommittee of council?
Well, can I just clarify something? If it's committee of council, council would make the final decision on the grants.
It's on the delegation.
So it could be delegated, so the group did. Okay, if I make.
These delegate
Are
authority.
you happy with that, Councillor Maynard?
So to a governance subcommittee, did you say?
To replace the word group with subcommittee of council as per Paul's advice.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. So do you have?
Yes.
Okay. Right, okay. So move to appoint a governance subcommittee of council. And now there's been some dispute over calling for nominations for a youth leader. Does anybody wish to amend the recommendation to exclude that?
Yeah, I'll move that.
And I'll second.
But it's not to remove them. It's just, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
That's when the governance, although, haven't we just said that in what the structure looks like, it's actually in there about the Rangatahi strategy under 6.1, was it?
Well, can I point out that the contents of a paper do not ever form a resolution unless they're in the resolution, but purely commentary.
So we need to. Oh, okay. Now I'm getting really confused. So this is getting too.
I think we're getting down into the weeds of the resolutions to be here. The idea of each of the resolutions, to my mind, is to allow us to operationalize this fund. Actually, the nitty gritty of at what point do we appoint the youth representative seems kind of irrelevant at this point. It will happen in due course. Like, that point can stay there. The group will be formed, and in due course, a youth leader will be appointed. It
So the calls for nominations for a youth leader doesn't need to be in the.
doesn't happen, well, no, it does.
It doesn't need to be in this resolution because it's in the.
Okay, so let us come back to order. So there is an amendment that we exclude the words "and call for the nomination of a youth leader to be nominated" at this point, which does not exclude it permanently. It just gets the governance group underway. All in favour of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. Against? Okay, that's carried. So therefore we come to the motion, which is moved to appoint a governance group, full stop. Any further discussion? Then I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Now, any comments about recommendation 4, which is at this stage approving the governance group to approve projects to 50K?
I just have a question about why 50K. This is a big fund designed to do big transformational projects.
Who decided it was
Where's
make big
50K from? Why isn't it 150,000?
Who decided it was for big transformational projects?
Because that's what the aim of the fund was when you read the original documents.
The minimum, oh, sorry, Chair. May I speak?
Okay.
The minimum is 50K. And that was set in place by the previous council because they wanted to distinguish it from grants, which was 25K, so it's considerably larger than that. And then 50 as a floor still allows you to make larger applications that could I just finish, please? Sorry. That still allows you to make an application for a larger transformative project. And plus the conversation went that you've still got the ability to put LTP projects or other projects decided by council through the fund, which would be of a much larger scale. So the answer, councillor, is that you've got both the ability for the community to run something at 50K, which might be very transformational for a community, but you've also got that larger amount that can come through council. Thank you.
Okay, well, that says approved projects up to 50K. That's not saying a minimum of 50K.
It says minimum of 25 on here.
Well, what if it's 25? Why not go to the grants committee? Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is you can approve up to 25K. The grants committee.
Well, I think again at this stage it's best if people's comments hint at whether or not you are likely to approve the recommendation or that you're likely to vote against it and why, so that the rest of us can be persuaded. I'm going to go to Councillor Woodcock and then I think it's Councillor Bosley.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for Paul, what you were saying earlier. Were you sort of implying that, for instance, if you spent $400,000 on a project rather than 8 projects of 50,000, the administration costs might be a lot less?
So the efficiency of having that level of oversight and negotiation ability is enabled because you've got one person that's able to look at the various moving parts, if that makes sense.
Okay, the discussion is not going to the meat of the resolution, so we'll go and vote for it. So the motion is that we delegate authority to the governance group or the governance subcommittee of the council to approve projects up to 50K. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Okay, number 5, we request ELT to consider any long-term plan projects to be accelerated and funded through the Community Wellbeing Fund. Do I have anyone moving that?
Yep,
I do. Councillor Oles. Do I have a seconder? I do. Councillor Sadler. Councillor Oles, tell us why.
I think that this should be a priority. There are a lot of LT projects, for instance, that could be fast-tracked with additional funding, and I'm sure they'll come to the fore as officers present them to us. So.
Thank you. Councillor Sadler-Footer.
In agreement with Councillor Oles.
For or against? Councillor Gray.
If I was not on the council and I was looking at this, I would think that this was a fund that was set up by the council for the council to apply for its own projects without the community having as much support with it. I just wonder whether or not the wording of it needs to, I mean, this looks like encouraging ELT to cut in line and fund its LTP projects. I feel uncomfortable with it.
Right, and you are therefore uncomfortable with the resolution?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why we still can't use it, but I don't know why we need to have a resolution specifically instructing ELT to utilise this fund over and above what the community has access to.
Okay, Councillor Woodcock.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking, thanks, Mr Mayor, about the same sort of thing that needs to be reworded somewhere along the lines of,
Taken out.
well, take it out altogether, or, yeah, not ELT, it shouldn't be to consider it, maybe should recommend any possibilities or something even, but the wording's just not quite clear.
I would suggest you don't need the wording at all. I think it's quite possible for ELT and or the council to take ideas to the subcommittee, see how they stand up. Yeah. So, Councillor Olds, do you wish to?
Yeah, I think perhaps the wording needs to be changed. I don't want to remove ELT from the discussion, though, of advancing some of these LTT or bringing to the attention of the governance group some of these LTP projects that could be advanced. I don't want that to be dampened in any way, because I still think there's merit in ELT bringing those to the governance group for consideration when allocating funding.
I don't think it was wording either alters or.
Can we change it to allow?
Well,
allow ELT to
I mean, they're allowed already.
They're allowed.
So I want to formalise.
Okay, do you wish to propose an amendment, Councillor Bosley?
Yeah, they've been allow the ELT when they do it anyway. We need to formalise.
Right, okay. So Councillor Bosley's amendment is that we change the word request to allow. Do I have a seconder, please? I do. Councillor Corley, any comments from anyone? Thank you, Councillor Fleming.
Yes, I'm just reading the DIA guidance on this, and this is not the no worse off funding package. Everybody's got to remember that. This is the better off funding package, which is specifically targeted to the four wellbeings, to the wellbeing, and it says very much it's got to be wellbeing focused. So it's community focused. It's not DIA roading. It's not water. It's not that. It's actually the social well-being. That's what it's targeted for. So we need to remember that.
I understand.
This is, and if we're looking at our LTP projects, 90% of those are going to be big infrastructure projects. That's not what this fund is for.
The 10% don't.
That's exactly. 10% can come to us. Yeah.
But earlier on in that document, Councillor Plummer, it says how to identify and prioritise initiatives, and these initiative examples: public transport improvement program, street lighting project, coastal placemaking and initiative,
and lighting,
digital automation. So there does go back to.
Did you mention lighting?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have an amendment that changes the word request to allow.
Yep.
All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Two against. So the wording is now.
I'm actually against it because I just don't even think it needs to be in there.
Right, I agree with you. But anyway, if you are either for or against, can you make your vote audible to the front of the room? Thank you very much. So I think it's carried. Now we come to the substantive motion, which is that we allow ELT to consider any LTP projects to be accelerated and funded through the fund. Is there any remaining discussions? I will vote against it, but anybody else? I think it's completely unnecessary wording.
Take it out.
Okay, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. No. We'll take a show of hands. In favour, please say aye. 1, 2, 4.
What are we voting on?
We're voting on allow ELT to consider any long-term plan projects to be accelerated and funded through the welfare fund.
On your amendment.
So we voted on the amendment which replaces request with allow. Now we're voting on the full resolution, and I've asked people to put their hands up if they are in favour. And we have 1, 2. Please put your hand up if you are against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The motion is lost. And now we come to what sounds to have been the more contentious issue: approve a ringed fenced amount of 75K annually, 105K for the setup and close down. Do I have anybody who would support that? I do. Councillor Gray. For a seconder, Councillor Olds, Councillor Gray.
Based on the advice that we've had from ELT around it, it sounds like these are necessary costs, and I think if we're going to go ahead with it, we need to make sure we're doing it well. I think it's been discussed plenty, and happy to support it.
Councillor Olds.
No, thanks, Your Worship. I would endorse Councillor Gray's.
Yeah. Do I have people who wish to comment on the resolution?
I'd like to know when you intend to activate that. That's because if you're going to do it now and we haven't even got we haven't even rules, we're wasting money. And so, you know, let's structure this so that we're not going to be getting somebody in just to do something.
But I think the point of ring fencing.
You're right to reply.
No, I agree with the ring fencing, but I just want to hear from our officers as to when do you see that ring fenced money would be ready to use?
Councillor Macaulay.
I'd like a little bit more detail about this was like a position description for this.
No, we don't need to drill down.
But I just don't understand entirely what this person is going to do other than be interacting with the doing the applications and the reporting. But is that what it is?
Well, we can come back.
Not a full position description, but just a description of the tasks this person would have. That's all. So
thank you. I will be voting against this. I think this is taking far too much money to spend on ourselves, and I just don't think that looks in any way acceptable to most ratepayers. Anybody? Councillor Sadler-Footer.
Look, when you talk about administrating a fund and using costs, that always feels uncomfortable. But if the reality is that resources required to administer the fund, to make the fund operational and to be able to get the funds out into the community for projects, then unfortunately that's the pill you have to swallow. Without administrative support of some level, we may as well have not had the conversation we've spent the last hour having, because we can't administer the fund. We won't be able to get it out. Our staff have said quite clearly, with the resources they currently have, they cannot administer this fund to see it out into the public arena. The numbers seem big. Do they feel comfortable? No, but that's what's required to get this project underway. Like it or not, that's what it is.
Any final comments? Okay, sorry.
Do you mind if I make comment on
You may.
The work, just very briefly, the work to get this fund underway is not simply about the delivery of the outcomes associated with the fund. It is the setup of the fund. And as things currently stand, or I'd be committing a team that is already maximised with the LTP and the work and the rating review to an additional piece of work that they're not resourced to deliver.
Right. Any last comments? Okay.
Could I just ask Paul to explain a little bit more, because I don't quite just understand the scope of what this person would be doing. Could just expand on it a bit, because it's probably all in your head.
So in the initial stages, councillor, we need to obviously work with whatever the governance group might look like to pull together the terms of reference. And I'm not suggesting it be a full project manager, a full-time position to begin with, but we need initial resource to get things set up and moving. And it's not too dissimilar to another committee that the mayor and I attended just a matter of a few months ago that was in startup mode, that needed that to give it a kickstart, and then it became self-sustainable, you know, with the support of the resource for the longer term.
And then they would be involved with doing the applications and the report, the detailed reporting which is required.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So we could start off with a part-time person and then expand it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we'd be very happy to. We just need the resource to just allow me to work with the team to figure out what we need in this startup phase, and then the scope of work for that role would be expanded once the governance group were receiving applications and having to do with DIA, etc.
Oh, thank you. That's helpful for me.
Councillor Gray, do you wish to write a reply?
Would it be right in assuming that if we didn't ring fence it out of the fund, that at some point we may need to find unbudgeted OPEX
Correct.
to cover the cost of managing the fund? So this is just about making sure that
It's covered.
it's covered from within the fund.
Okay, so we'll put the motion as that we approve a ring fenced amount to provide supplementary administration, facilitation, management resources in amounts of 75K annually and of 105K for setups and close downs. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. No. The motion is carried. We will stop for lunch.
Hey.
Ron was last.